Right, one thing I want to ask is before we get to the era, because obviously he was a long time H2K player, and then you know him since then. Your boy Odoamne, who, as far as I know, aren't you his agent?
Yeah.
Just thought to mention that as a disclaimer here, right? Obviously, this is back when he was just some fucking Romanian guy that was just a really good top laner and kind of came out of nowhere on the Cloud9 team, like you say. Was Odoam there? I mean, it's funny because his game is so timeless and consistent and classic. Was he the same sort of person back then? Because if people don't know, I'm not as shocked as maybe some of the fans are that like he's not in Rogue or he has this weird thing in Excel. Because if people don't know, I vibe with him because it's my type of person, but he is really fucking upfront and he likes conflict. If people don't know. Like it's not even that he just talks. He just likes. That's his way of communicating. Like first of all, he just come from East Europe, guys. You have to understand they're just like that. They're not fucking like. It's not like corporate culture in America. But I just wondered in the early days, was he like? Was he considered toxic? Was he a cool guy back then? What was the early Odoamne like?
He was more cocky back then. Like now he has this kind of dry, almost British, like cynical sense of humor, yes. I guess, which he's like honed over like a lot of years. Back then, there was a time when people would thought he was like a bad teammate. Not in the game particularly, but like in VOD reviews and out of the game, he was very like, I would say he had a very big ego and he would like talk down on people a lot, which I think he felt in his head was like quite comedic sometimes, but it didn't always vibe with people. Right. And I remember, even though this was a massive overreaction, because the manager wanted to kick different people every fucking week, but I remember his name would come up a lot. I was like, we should replace this guy. We can get Duke from Korea or whatever. And I'm always like, you're fucking mental. But where that came from was that he was having conflicts with people outside of the game in that sense. But he evolved massively over time. And now I think basically everyone who plays with him says he's like a great teammate.
Yes.
So yeah, I think he's always been a great teammate in game. He's always had like really good clear comms, and he's always been obviously a top tier player. But I think outside of the game, he was kind of like he was very normal in a lot of ways. In that I think he was sort of stereotypically like cool, I guess. Whereas like,
I mean, if people don't know, he's one of those players that's never had a problem getting girlfriends and stuff. He's not a super nerd in that regard. Yeah, he's always had like.
Yeah, exactly. I was about to say like on that team, for example, like AOD, like Forbidden, like all these young guys, I would know they were gamers from a mile away, you know, like they were very stereotypically gay. Odo was like, came into a room, like smile, shake your hand, like introduce himself, like dictate the conversation. Like he was much more well developed. I could tell that he'd been doing like high level sport and stuff like outside of the game, and had like finished school and been surrounded by sort of more normality, I suppose, and not just locked in a basement. So yeah, he was always like ahead of everyone else and more developed, to the point where when I met him, he was either 18 or 19, but he was like a normal social 18 or 19-year-old. The others were like 13-year-olds mentally, you know? So yeah, he was definitely a lot more cocky back then, I would say, and he like reeled that in massively. Like he's still obviously very self-confident, but he's not as outwardly like, I'm so much better than this, like these trash players or whatever. Like he doesn't do that anymore. He's much more sort of grounded. But yeah, I mean, in terms of play style as well, I think back then he still believes it now, and I believe it as well to a certain extent. But like people try and pigeonhole him as like this tank only player and stuff like this. I think he's just realized in more recent years that he can most easily band-aid other people's problems by playing in that way. Like if he plays something in hyper carries, and by the way, not too long ago when you saw him in summer on Schalke and so on, he was just straight up hard carrying games.
Yes.
But he just feels that on a consistent basis, other people, and again, not in like a condescending way, but other people will make too many mistakes that he can't bandage if he plays the carry and he's constantly on a side lane away from his team. Whereas I think he feels more comfortable and in control when he plays these more, tank sort of weak side, if you like. Like he can just sucker up like all of his team's problems into his own little vase, and then they can play more freely. But back then, especially, he was playing like way more carry stuff. Like him and Forbidden used to argue in draft about like who would play. Like back then, Jace was like a super flex, right? It would always either go top or mid, and it was equally good in both. And they would like argue about which one of them got to play it, you know? And it was like a legitimate conversation, like who is better on this champion, our fucking mid laner or our top laner? And they were like sort of top three in their role, even when they weren't in the LCS. So yeah, he was a very, very good carry player back then. And I guess just because he doesn't do it as much, he's probably regressed, or let's say less practiced on that.
Well, I have a question about this, actually. So the question goes, if you notice, as you said earlier, this is the guy who, if people don't know, is like a player's player, if you know what that terminology means. Like, there's a reason why the players always have him in high esteem, and a lot of his teammates think he was not only very good at the game, but a great teammate. And it's why I notice experts and analysts always have him as like, if I'm ever making a super team, I always put him as top lane, because then, as you pointed out, like, spoiler, look at all his teams, the fucking ADC's nearly always like the star of the team. He's just the most perfect fucking weak side player ever. But what people don't know, as you said, is he could definitely play the carries. Like, one, I remember back in season 5, Kelsey, who at the time I already talked to, obviously, and I remember Veteran wrote an article on this, I think, they actually had him as the next best top laner after Hooney, when Hooney was in his peak, because he's one of the only ones that could sort of match up with him. Obviously, later at the Season 6 Worlds, he had all that shit on, like you say, on Jace, which was hard carrying, wrecking Koreans in scrims. Like, essentially, if his career went a different way, like we could GM his teams in a different sense, and maybe we make it like the weak side ADC, this guy could have had the same respect from players, but his career could have been so different, right?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, like I will put it's an uncontroversial take, I guess, but like Soaz for me is like the Western GOAT of top lane at the moment. There is like an argument, I guess, you can make for Wonder. I do think now Odo is so hard winning the longevity argument, and I see no reason why he'll drop off like anytime remotely soon. That the only thing he'll probably lack at the end is like team accolades. Like I guess he'll probably still be short on that. But yeah, for me, like the sustained level, like even, by the way, bear in mind the regular season now is 3 fucking weeks. And after week 1, people were like, ha, Odo is washed, which they say at the start of every season. And then in season 2, oh wow, he's fucking mega again, like S tier superstar level. Like who could have fucking guessed? Like I just think there are certain players that it really is purely just a motivational thing. And I don't mean like he didn't have motivation, then he did. I just mean like as long as this guy is motivated to play, he will be either the best or in and around the best players. Same with Jankos, by the way. I put that guy like in the same bracket for jungle. Like these guys can be as S tier for as long as they fucking want. So yeah, I think that he has always been sort of unfairly judged because of the, I guess, falling short, and at one point in time, like the choking narrative, which the brush Jankos was also painted with. But again, I think in recent times you can see that's not been the case. Like he reached a bunch of finals, they were super unlucky not to win them. He wasn't really the problem in any of those finals, and then when they finally won the final at the third time of asking, obviously he was unbelievable, and also in the semi-final against Fnatic, right? So I think that yeah, he's kind of overcome all the stuff that was held against him, and now it's sort of, yeah, everything he does from this point is just building, in my opinion. And I would guess, as I say, when he does eventually retire, he'll probably will go down as the GOAT of top lane, just because he'll have so many splits where you like he was top 3. And I don't think that you'll be able to say that for any of the other guys he's competing with.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.